Hi, my name is Rahul. I was asked to do a recovery video um, because I recovered from ciprofloxacin being floxed, adverse reaction to Cipro, which anyone who knows what an adverse reaction is, it's a lot worse than an allergic reaction. So before I start, I consider myself recovered, but I still have PTSD from Cipro and the time that it happened. But like I said, I still consider myself recovered. So I'll start at the beginning because I should say before I start this, I have not talked about this before, and so this is likely to be quite difficult for me and might have some feelings. So maybe if I end up editing this, hopefully I'll just do it in one fell swoop. But if I end up editing this, and because I'm too emotional, but anyway, I'll start. So I had a testicle pain in 2017 around March 2017. So I went to the doctor, the hospital, because I was worried it was a UTI, and they said, yes, a UTI, prescribed me Cipro. Went home, didn't think anything of it. I'd never had a UTI before. Subsequently, I found out they misprescribed me. I'm unlikely to get a UTI at my age. I was 34 at the time. I'm very unlikely to get a UTI. My symptoms also didn't cover a UTI. But that's by the by now. So I took the medication, and I went back to the doctor afterwards, and I saw a few different doctors. I went to Accident Emergency in the UK. I'm from the UK, in case you couldn't tell. And I received the worst medical care. I remember one of the doctors who I spoke to, she said, I think you're just anxious, in this really patronising way. And that was actually when I decided to stop taking Cipro, because I was having such extreme anxiety. Not like regular anxiety, I've had anxiety before, but this was more than that. I felt unsafe. And I think when you start to feel unsafe, that's a sign to something might need to change. And I actually ended up trying to sue the trust that prescribed me this medication, because I received such awful care from them. But I had left it too late, because it took me so long to recover that by the time it came round to it, I'd left it too late. Well, anyway, that's my burden. So I'll go into the symptoms in a bit, but I just wanted to lay the groundwork for what happened and stuff. And so, like I said, I was basically, my main symptom that caused me to seek help was I was having really, really bad anxiety and panic. And actually, maybe it's worth reading my symptoms now, because maybe I'll remember. I'll read them now. So it's quite a long list, so get ready. So I had a rash in various places. I had hypomania. I couldn't eat. So I lost about 10 kilograms in 2 weeks. I couldn't put any weight on for about 6 months, despite eating lots and lots of food. I had acute insomnia, so I slept for 6 hours in 3 days. I had anxiety attack. My heart rate went up to about 130 BPM resting from about 60 BPM. Had heart palpitations. Lost control of my bladder, so I was peeing 75 times a day. Fucking hell. Remember that now. Diarrhea, constipation, anxiety. I stopped drinking tap water because I was afraid of the fluoride. So I got that idea in my head from someone and just became really scared. So being able to have showers on my own, eat meat. Then I had tremors. My hands and my body just shook even when I was just sitting there, they were just shaking like that. I had neuropathy, so I had this like ice cold pain in my body. I pulled muscles, I had acid reflux, I had stomach pains, I was burping all the time, I had extreme tiredness as well afterwards. Some nights I slept for 14 hours continuously. I went to bed at like 8 o'clock and woke up at 10 o'clock the next day. And I spent all day in bed subsequently. I had maybe some days I had like 10 minutes of like lucidity, of just feeling like not like death. And I had to sit in like the darkness. I was extremely emotional, which I'll get to. I had a feeling that I had been poisoned, so I wanted to drink lots of water to flush it out. And so I was drinking like 6 litres of water a day. And I don't connect that necessarily with the peeing 75 times a day, because I needed to pee like every 10 minutes and a drop came out. So it wasn't necessarily connected. I think when you feel poisoned, you want to flush out your system. I mentioned this to my girlfriend, it's quite painful to say this, but I felt I was like I felt like I was being kept alive to be tortured. It was really painful. A persistent feeling of that I was going to die. Got dry eyes, which I still use these drops for. This is kind of weird sensation, but it's not knowing how long I've been asleep for. So I might go to sleep for an hour and have no idea when I woke up. So it used to take me about an hour maybe to wake up. So I'd like wake up and it would take me an hour to get out of bed. So I had no idea how long I slept for. So like I could sleep for like 14 hours and felt like I slept 1, sleep for an hour, felt like I slept 14. I had no idea how long I'd been asleep for. Generally, I think people know how long they've been asleep for. I had all these head sensations, so like these like popping and electrical charges around my head, and anytime I had to concentrate on something, I felt like trying to fall asleep. Like my head would like get these like it was really quite scary. Those head sensations. I had tinnitus. I also had phonophobia, which if you don't know, it's when you hear noises, you feel really tired and you feel really overwhelmed. I had random sharp pains over my body, like a knife was cutting me, which was really scary. I had suicidal ideation, and I developed, I guess I still have health anxiety from it all. So anyway, that's my symptom list. As you can hear, it's pretty long. And so I'll start. So anyway, I had this testicle pain and went to the doctor. Then eventually the hypomania was so awful that I decided to check into a mental hospital, and I went to this mental hospital, and I met this doctor in there who was in there for depression. He was a patient, not one of the staff, and I told him what happened to me. And I remember he looked at me and he goes, always the fluoroquinolones. And I was like, what do you mean? And he goes, yeah, I've had patients who have had this, they've had the same reaction. That was the first doctor who believed me, and he was mental. And he was depressed, he wasn't mental, but like just a nice little bit of, okay, what's going on for me? I'm not crazy. And I met a quite nice doctor, psychiatrist in there called Dr. Parker, who was, who frankly, he had never seen it before, but he referred me on to a general physician, which is quite rare in the UK for a general physician, and called Dr. Glynn. And Dr. Glynn, I was really fortunate I had seen this before. And so he said, yep, this is that. He kind of said to me, you'll be better in 2 to 4 weeks, which I wasn't. But I guess maybe he was basing that on his previous patient. I remember when he said to me, yeah, this is an adverse reaction to ciprofloxacin, I couldn't cry. I was just shaking because I was so overwhelmed. I couldn't cry. I didn't cry for a long time, actually. Too overwhelmed. I wrote this down in the thing I was going to say. I don't feel like saying it now, but I think I will say it. I understand why people commit suicide with an adverse reaction, and um, I wrote a suicide note before I went into the mental hospital because I didn't think I'd be able to survive. And it's funny, in my head I thought I'd written a will, but I hadn't. It was a suicide note, and I read it again about 6 months afterwards when I was in therapy, and I read it and I was just like, I really want to leave this behind. And I read it and I thought it's something that I want to remind myself of the worst time in my life, and I didn't. I didn't want to keep it. I just threw it away in my therapist's bin, and that was pretty intense. Anyway, so I'll start kind of from the. Anyway, I left the mental hospital with hypomania. I spent 2 weeks there, just calming down my system a little bit. They gave me a few meds like Seroquel and Seroquel to fall asleep because I had insomnia, and beta blockers because my heart rate was so high. So those are the two things. But apart from that, I did not want to take medication. I didn't even take paracetamol. All these pills and potions that people recommended, I had no intention of taking them. A doctor who I saw, maybe I shouldn't say what I thought about him, because he was a cunt. And he just said, here's 3 weeks worth of benzos, take them, and see you later. It's just anxiety. And I told him I'm in addiction recovery. I'm a really long time sober. I'm coming up to 18 years sober. Well, at that time I was 14 years, or 15 years-ish. And I told him, I was like, I don't want to go home with a box of fucking benzos. And he just did not understand it. And I think that's actually when I decided to go into a mental hospital, because I was like, if I'm at home, I don't trust myself. For an addict, hopefully you might understand that. And so that's part of the reason I went in, because I thought if it's prescribed by a doctor, I'm in this it's for a own medical need, then maybe I can handle that. But actually, when I went in, I kind of knew in my heart of hearts I didn't want to take it. I'm not saying that's not the case for other people, because I was well within my rights to take this, but I didn't. So anyway, early recovery. The thing I kept saying to myself, my family didn't really know what the fuck was going on with me, because they were just like, you're normal 2 weeks ago, and you're hypomanic, and you're crying, and you're raging, what the fuck is going on? And the thing I kept saying to myself, which is a weird, I'll explain why I kept saying it to myself. So I'm a big fan of politics shows, and I'm sure there's some people who are into Trump who might be watching this, but when Trump was happening, there were some kind of quite quasi-fascist things that he was doing and saying, and one of the things that I was reading from a guy who studied fascism, he said, and they were saying, what should we do in this instance when this thing might happen in the future? And they kept saying, you need to keep saying to yourself, this is not normal. This is not normal. Apologies to any Trump lovers, I love you. And this is not normal. And I kept saying it to myself and my family to remind myself, this is not normal, and this isn't me. This is something that's happened. I've been poisoned. I'm having a severe adverse reaction. This is something in my body. And my family, I think they finally got it. It took a while. My sister was wonderful with it. She understood it. And actually, I think the reason she understood it is because she actually had an adverse reaction to Cipro herself, which she never mentioned, because it was so awful. She just wanted to forget about it. And my mum's uncle had, so I think it must be genetic. Other families have taken it. Other members of my family have taken it and not had an adverse reaction. So So I kept saying to myself, this is not normal. And so I was highly anxious. I stopped drinking tap water, eating regular meat, only ate organic meat and vegetables. And I realise now that that was a way to make me feel safe. But I don't think it really did anything, if I'm honest. It was just a way that I could feel like I'm doing everything I can to recover. And I did that for a long time, like 6 months, I ate really simple food at the beginning. And that wasn't because it was like good for me. It's that because I was terrified to eat. So everything new, I was terrified of having an allergic reaction. I was terrified of having an adverse reaction. Even though I've never had anything like that in my life, I was absolutely terrified. And I was just eating really simple food all the time. It took me and I'm really, really into eating food and restaurants and things. And so, I just did what helped me feel safe. And so I think quite early on I realised I was in it for the long haul. I hoped it was like through the 2 to 4 weeks that Dr. Glenn had said, but it wasn't. And I kind of knew after 3 or 4 weeks that doesn't feel like it's going away anytime soon. So I kind of started, I guess, being prepared that this is for the long haul. And accordingly not resisting it. And there was a point just before I checked into the mental hospital where I couldn't sleep, and I had insomnia, and I couldn't sleep for anything, and I was in so much agony, physical and mental distress. And I remember it's like 5 or 6 in the morning, my whole night I'd be like that was my life at that time for a few days before I went into the mental hospital. And I remember just feeling this, like I was in so much pain. I couldn't talk to anybody. Everyone else was obviously all asleep, and there's just something that I connected onto, which was I deeply accepted that I was ill. And it's funny, when I really deeply accepted that I was ill, I stopped suffering. I had all the same symptoms. But they did not feel as bad. I was like, it just is what it is. And, I think that's a really important, maybe like, I'll come into later some learning that maybe I can share with other people, but that's like, for me, a really important thing to like deeply, deeply accept what is going on, because I don't think we're like really in control of it. It's like in our body, and especially in the acute early stages. I'm not saying for later, but in the early stages, I was not in control of it, and trying to be like, I just want to get better. That wasn't going to help me. I knew that. So I remember at the beginning, I came home and I couldn't even watch a film. I remember watching The Wedding Crasher because it was just on. I thought, I've seen it before. Not Wedding, The Wedding Singer, and with Alan Sandler. I've seen it before. It's just like a film that you have on in the background, and I watched it. And hopefully this is not a spoiler, but like he gets dumped by his like partner before the wedding, and I watched that, and I couldn't separate myself from the pain that he was feeling. I felt the pain he felt. I could not. There was no boundary. I had no internal boundary there, and I felt this pain, and I was like, if somebody had like removed the filter from the world, and everything was like ramped up from like something that would be like a 1 out of 10 was like a 20 out of 10. And I watched it for like 1 second, and he's just like, heart was breaking, and I felt like I'm about to like have a breakdown and be hospitalised because I'm so overwhelmed at the emotion and the feeling that he's feeling. Kind of realised pretty soon that I needed to like be really careful with who I spent my time with, who I spoke to, people who were like difficult to be around, to not talk to them about anything difficult, not watch anything difficult. I started watching the news. Because I'm a political junkie. Sorry again, no Trump supporters. I understand why people vote for different things. And and so I think the thing that I kind of really realised that worked for me, and maybe this is a good time to talk about this actually, so I have chronic fatigue syndrome that I've had from my drug using days, and so I've been recovering from that. I was always recovering from that before I had Cipro, and so one thing I didn't want to do was take medication and supplements because, okay, so basically, a lot of people with CFS, a lot of what they talk about on Facebook groups and message boards is the next supplement and what they think is going on. So there's a lot of angst about, are you taking CoQ10? Do you think it's mercury poisoning? Do you think it's this? That's not my story. I'm not, that stuff really doesn't work for me. I have enough difficulty getting through life to need a science degree to recover. And it's really, just something in me just shuts down. It doesn't feel right for me either. It doesn't feel like the way to recover. And lots of people I know who've recovered from things have not said anything about supplements. I know quite a few people who recover from CFS, and actually randomly I know somebody who recovered from a doxycycline adverse reaction, and he didn't mention anything like that. He said just time and, just doing the right things, looking after yourself, keep a simple life. And so anyway, I decided not to take any medication or supplements. So, if you need that works for you, go for it. Whatever works, really. Maybe that's my message. It's whatever works. If that doesn't feel right for you, don't feel pressured to take something you don't want to take, because the anxiety of the testing, what works, doesn't work, for me was not worth the testing. I remember right at the beginning, my sister was like, oh, you need to take these glutathione injections. And I didn't really want to take a fucking supplement. I didn't want to take I didn't want to take a vitamin C or something. So I was like, how the hell am I going to have a fucking glutathione injection? And maybe those things would have worked and I would have recovered really quickly. I don't know. I guess I'll never know. But, or magnesium or something. I'm sure lots of people take that. I was just terrified. I did not want anything in my body that wasn't food or water. Didn't drink a juice. Didn't drink a herbal tea. I literally just meat, vegetables, carbs, and water. That's all I had for 6 months. I was so scared. And another thing I did was I processed my feelings with my girlfriend and my family, which was difficult because, as I said, for the first few months I could not cry. I thought I'm going to speak to a therapist, and I spoke to an old therapist of mine. She said, I told her what had happened, and she said, that must have been really difficult for you. And I just shut down and I had to turn off the computer. I was so overwhelmed. As I found out subsequently, people who've gone through traumatic experiences, they can't talk about it for the first few months minimum. It's actually not recommended that they do psychotherapy. So ultimately I did end up doing it, which I'll get on to later. But I processed my feelings. I remember maybe 3 or 4 months in, I started crying all of a sudden, and my body was shaking, and I started crying, which for me was really cathartic and a really big part of why I feel like I recovered. And at the beginning, I remember taking it one day at a time, knowing just what today is just today. Whatever happens today is just happens today. I'm not going to worry about what happens tomorrow. That is really not my nature, but I saw that as a recovery tool. So just keeping it in the day. And so one thing I will mention is, actually I'll mention this first. I'll mention something else first. Maybe it's better. So one thing I did was if I had a small incremental progress that's seemingly insignificant. So, like, for example, I was drinking 6 litres of water a day, and then I got that down to like drinking 2 litres of water a day. That was progress, you know. But I started at like 4.5, then 4, then 3.5. That was progress. Some days it was like I added a bit of pepper, you know, salt and pepper to food, because I was terrified of acid reflux, and having like spicy food felt like, oh my god, maybe I'll get acid. I never actually even had acid reflux with spicy food. I was terrified, so I didn't try anything. So, you know, I was peeing like 75 times a day, then I started peeing like 50 times a day. Just, I guess what I'm trying to say is, small, insignificant progress is progress. And it's okay for that, you know. And if, in fact, not is that only okay, it's, for me, that's what I feel like in the early stages really helped. Something really tangible. And I had all different things that I had progress in. One of my progress was I called a friend, and I was like, how's that progress? And I was thinking, because some part of me wants to get back to normality and wants to laugh. That was progress, because I didn't want to speak to anybody. And, you know, trying new foods and making a meal for myself, because my mum, she was wonderful and like looked after me. She flew back from Mauritius, where she was living at the time, to come and look after me, which was incredible. And incredible. And you know, things like I couldn't have a shower by myself because I was so scared. And so then having a shower, and then I didn't use any like body wash and you know, it was really, I remember using like a bit of body wash once and like washed it off in like 5 seconds, and I just cried in the shower. I just cried and cried and cried, because I just realised that 2 weeks ago I couldn't even like get in the shower by myself, and now I'm like using shower gel. And like, to somebody on the outside, that might be like, what the fuck? That's rubbish. But like, to me, that was like a big fucking deal when I was in it, a really big deal. So maybe this kind of links on to what I was going to say before. I found a strength in myself that I didn't know existed, because I was suicidal, I was psychotic, and I had to find strength in me that said to myself, this cannot be you. And there was such darkness. I can't even like relay the darkness. The scariest time in my life, without a doubt. There was like one time when I had like psychosis, which I will get to later. Actually, maybe I'll get to it now. I basically was all like fragile, and I tripped. Not tripped, but I probably, maybe more than tripped. I was going to bed, and I had like a hard headboard, and I banged my head 3 times on 3 different days. And I got post-concussion syndrome. And if anyone's ever had post-concussion syndrome, it is awful. And I had post-concussion syndrome, I had Cipro, I was tired, I had all these symptoms, and they combined into this perfect storm of intensity, shall we say. And it was the worst experience I've ever had in my life. I've only talked about it to one person, to my therapist, and even then I couldn't really talk about it, and because it was so overwhelming. And I was psychotic, and I found this strength in me which said to me, you have gone through this thing, you have to live. You have to live. So I decided that I was going to live. This was a weird thing for me to say out loud, but there was a decision. It was like, I have to decide to live. I have to decide to get better. Because I can easily capitulate and let this overwhelm me. But I didn't. And, listening to myself and knowing what I needed and not pushing myself to do what I wasn't ready for, that's a big one. That is a really big one. So you need to listen to yourself. You know what you need in your heart of hearts. Sometimes you're going to be confused and there's going to be all these messages. People are saying, have you tried this supplement? Your family's saying, why don't you just try and do this thing? Maybe your boss is saying, why don't you come back to work? You're hearing about other people recovering and you're like, oh, what did they do? Why can't I recover? They're not you. So don't worry about it. Just listen to yourself. You know what you need. I know what I needed. I didn't always know, but I had to develop that skill. So I tried to not log down everything, every progress that I made. I only checked in with myself every 2 weeks. So I didn't write down at the end of every 2 weeks when I check in with myself, but I knew roughly in 2 weeks I'd check in with myself. Sometimes it was like 3 weeks and I checked in with myself. And when I checked in with myself every 2 or 3 weeks, I knew I'd made progress. I knew I had. And it was tangible progress. Sometimes, like I said, it was just having a shower by myself. Other times it was I walked 100 metres further in a day. One day I remember it was like, I decided not to do any of the things that I was doing, like going for a walk and stuff. I just went to see somebody who lived near me. And I was like, wow, I'm want to see another human being who isn't my family. That's progress. I called a friend that evening and I was like, wow, I haven't spoken to my friend in ages. That's progress. Progress and one stage is progress can be another stage is drawback. So what I mean by that is, if I was just measuring by a single metric of I walked a little bit further every day, that's why I'm improving, I would not get better. And I don't think you will either. It will change. You kind of have to get back to some sense of a whole life. And that's why I say, calling people, having, speaking to your friends. Obviously I know we're in a pandemic, so maybe you can't necessarily visit people, but start speaking to people, start laughing, watch something funny because you want to watch something funny. Another thing I noticed is I improved a lot more when I rested. So when I was out doing things, running around, trying to make progress, I didn't actually make as much progress. I kind of stagnated a bit, if I'm honest. But when I rested, checked in with myself, stopped, slowed down, that's when every 2 weeks I noticed significant changes. So I'd highly recommend that, if that works for you. So the middle part of my recovery, I would think about 20 times a day, I'm not going to recover. And I knew I wasn't going to recover. And I don't mean I thought it, I knew it. I didn't say that to anybody. I didn't say it to my family because I didn't want anyone to be like, you're being negative. But I knew it, that I'm not going to recover. I thought to myself, I always get to this point where I make progress, but I feel so awful. The darkness is so heavy with Cipro that I never felt like I was ever going to overcome. I was never going to, go over that precipice. But you know what, I'm here. And so I guess the message is, don't always believe the worst thing you think, because it's not true. And I'm living proof it's not true, because I recovered. And, that darkness was, fucking awful. Fucking awful. I remember once when I had this psychosis, and I remember thinking, I'm never going to recover, and I know it. And I was going to ask my girlfriend. I remember saying to myself, I'm going to ask my girlfriend to quit uni and look after me, which is a big deal for me. I'm not that kind of person. I'd ask her to do that, and because I felt the darkness, and I was like, I'm going to die, I will not recover, and this is my life. And actually, now I look back, that psychosis that darkness, I guess, is the thing that ultimately helped me recover, which I'll get onto. So anyway, I had this psychosis, and all my childhood trauma came up. I think when life gives you lemons, then it gives you even more lemons, and I almost trauma came up, which was intense. Stuff that I had convinced myself wasn't true, like events and situations and things, and big stuff, and the trauma was so awful. I had to leave my family home, and I had to go stay with my girlfriend's family, and I had to call a therapist and do intensive trauma work while recovering from Cipro. And I was so vulnerable. I had to pay somebody to stay with me because I was so scared of myself, of sitting with myself. Actually, having that trauma, what it did was it forced me to face me. And so obviously I talked a lot about Cipro. I couldn't talk about the real Cipro, because it was too raw. I know that, but I talked about things. I cried a lot about Cipro. Obviously did a lot of trauma work as well, but anyway, the reason I mentioned that, it might feel slightly disconnected to a recovery story, but here's why I mention it. I think this is, I know not everybody is going to think like this, and I imagine if you don't think like this, you're probably not watching now anyway, but hopefully if you're stuck on this far, you're interested in this. I knew that Cipro was the worst thing I was likely to go through. One of the worst things I was likely to go through. And some good had to come out of it. There was no way that I was going to have this thing happen and be a victim of this drug company. I think Bayer makes it or something. Or whoever made Cipro. And I was I had all this anger and angst, I'm going to sue the company. I decided not to in the end. And some good has to come out of this. It cannot just be me got ill, recovered, and always felt this resentment my whole life at this thing that happened to me. That did not feel like that was going to help me. So I knew that I had to, the changes that I wanted to make in my life, I made sure I made them. So I started to change into a career that I really wanted to go into. I'm studying data science and made loads of changes in my life. And I know I wouldn't have made them without Cipro. And I know I wouldn't have faced my trauma work without Cipro. I guess what I'm really trying to relay is to everyone, if you are struggling, you're scared, this was a crisis, but it has also an opportunity. Good things can and will come from this. Might not be what you think it's going to be. I think sometimes we want life to be this, this to happen, this to happen, this to happen. This wasn't part of my plan, but it's happened. So for me, I had to turn it into something good to, to not kill myself. That's the honest truth. And to have a fucking reason to wake up every day. Because otherwise I was what the fuck? I have all this trauma, I have all this shit growing up, and a really difficult upbringing, and now I have this, I had CFS, I've had addiction, now I have Cipro. Woe is me. Woe is me. There's a saying in AA, which is pour me another drink. Which is when we get into that pity cycle, that's when we pick up using. And I understand people, not necessarily into that stuff, but for me, it helped me. It really helped me to look at it in that way, that if something good can happen for the worst thing, if I can survive the worst thing that ever happened to me, then I can do anything. And I do believe that now. I can do anything. And that's also a really nice feeling to be left with. This really awful thing that, I can do anything. I know I can come through anything. Um, what else? So another thing somebody said to me, I got a masseuse. I used to see my masseuse every week, my wonderful masseuse Valentine, and he, I won't share his story, but he told me that he had once been poisoned by his ex-wife, and I remember, and I said, he said, "Oh, do you know what helped me?" This was my first massage back with him, and I said, "Look, he said, like, oh, where have you been for the last year?" And I said, I told him what happened, and he said, "Oh, I was poisoned once." And I said, "What?" He kind of said, "Do you know what helped?" And I said, "What?" And he said, "A doctor." I said, "Oh, what doctor?" And he said, "Dr. Time." And I was just like, oh God, it was a really convoluted message. He was like, "It's just time." And I think that was the case for me. It's just time sometimes. That's where the kind of setting up yourself for the long haul comes in. It's just time sometimes. Being prepared. For me it was about 3 years. For some of you it might be like 10 years, 20 years. And I'm so sorry about that. Some of you might be fortunate. It might be a few months or a year. You might not feel fortunate, but maybe you will in hindsight. But however long it takes, it can and it does happen and it will happen. And maybe you don't always hear from the people who recover because they're so grateful to recover that they just get on with life. They forget about it. They don't need to think about it anymore. That's the truth. They don't need to think about it. But when you're ill, you need to think about it. And your brain kind of becomes, well, I know for me, becomes obsessed with recovering and whatever that means. When I identified myself, I identified myself as somebody who'd been floxed, as somebody who'd been, maybe not the word floxed, but maybe who'd been poisoned. I deliberately didn't go on any message boards, because I did not want to see and hear from other people who've been ill for a long time. I knew that wasn't going to help me. I might help other people, and I get that. If you need to, you please do that. But for me, that would have been limiting, because I knew that there's people who probably recover after a year and you'll never hear from them. They weren't on a message board, they just recovered. And I had to stick with that. And I did ring, actually some people, a really nice guy called James, a really lovely lady called Amy, who my girlfriend found on the message boards when I was really in a really dark place. I needed to talk to them. And they really helped me just to have identification. So yeah, actually, maybe do go on the message boards, get some identification. But also understand that your brain is highly susceptible and anxious. So if somebody says, "I don't think you can ever recover, I've been ill for 20 years, 30 years, and my symptoms haven't stopped," your brain can attach to that, and you can end up feeling like, "I will never recover." And I think it's important to feel like you can. Because if you don't feel like you can, unconsciously I feel like we will stop ourselves recovering. That's my soapbox. So anyway, I stopped the identification with being a victim. I guess I consider myself as a survivor now of Cipro. So in the end, I think I recovered when I stopped thinking about recovering. I woke up one day and I remembered that I hadn't thought about Cipro for months and I didn't have any symptoms left. I thought recovery was this dream that I would never fulfill. And when it happened, it ended up being a non-event. And I recovered before I even realised that I had recovered. So I think I recovered now during the pandemic, and I didn't think I even thought about it when I was like, oh wow, it's been 3 and a bit years, and I was like, oh yeah, I remember Cipro. I was like, I haven't had any symptoms for months. That's I'm recovered, which is, I like to say I want to feel good about it, but if I'm honest, I don't really, because I got on with my life. That's what I'm more excited about now than recovering from it. all I wanted to do was recover from it. Every minute of every day, that's all I thought about, recovering from it. But you know, like, time changes, and I think sometimes we have our focus outside of that world. For me anyway, that was really helpful. It really helped me. It's kind of recovery, your kind of body can heal in the background and you can focus on something else. So let's think. So I had lots of like learnings, things that I learned. And so I had like a doctor, I saw a neurologist who I saw when I had the post-concussion. She said something to me actually, which I mentioned because she mentioned it. And I asked her, why do some people get reactions to like Cipro, adverse reactions like I do? Anyway, she's a neurologist. She's a little bit out there for a neurologist, but she's very well respected, I should say. She's very well respected, in fact. So much so that the best neurologist in the country read her report and said, she's right. So anyway, she's a good neurologist. And she said to me something. She said an adverse reaction is more about the mental state that you're in your life beforehand than just the physical. There's obviously the physical stuff as well. You know, you got like your DNA or whatever. But she said that, and I always remember that. And I think maybe what I took from that was that like some part of me needed to be ill. This is not for everybody. So like, I'm not saying you chose to be ill. I'm not saying that. But I guess what I'm saying is my body knew I needed other healing as well. So for me, it was like I knew that I was going to be off life, as it were, for an amount of time. And my body kind of like was like, okay, you're going to be ill for a while. Let's look at some stuff that you needed to look at. And, you know, like, that I think is really... Like I said, I had to get some good out of it. I had to choose to look at this as a gift. That's really easy to say when you've recovered, and I know that I'm really sorry to say that. And if somebody has told me that early on, I would have told them to go fuck themselves. So if you're sitting there and telling me to go fuck myself, then cool, go for it. And but the message is still there, is that like maybe this is the push that you need to take some courage and some risks in other parts of your life that you might want to change when you do recover. So I guess maybe the way I looked at it is I viewed it as like a kind of like testing ground, is that I was kind of like out of normal life for a while. So things that I wouldn't normally get to do in normal life, like learning to code, I got to do. So I was like, oh, I get to do this thing. And, you know, shows that I wanted to watch that I never got to watch, I could have time to watch them because I was at home and I was ill. And, you know, because you'd suffered this really huge, awful thing, you decided in your heart that I'm not going to put up with any more shit anymore. So maybe you're in an unhappy marriage and you're like, I've gone through the worst thing. Why the fuck do I keep having all these awful things? Fuck this. I guess we get to choose how we use this time. I know that isn't the case for everybody, but, you know, you're in all different situations and stuff. I was fortunate that I get to make some of those choices for myself. I was very, very fortunate. You know, like I said, you know, I've been in CFS recovery, addiction recovery. So I think I know a little bit about the recovery process, and that it's long, and then it's day to day, and it's 2 steps forward, 1 step back, 2 steps forward, 1 step back. And that kind of, you know, it's not linear. And, you know, you move on to the next step of growth when you feel safe. Not when anybody tells you to feel safe, but when you feel safe. So just remember that it's you who needs to recover and who gets to recover. It's not anybody else. Do not recover for your family. Do not recover to go back to work. Recover because you deserve to be healthy. And, you know, you do what you need to do. If you need to look at supplements, you need to look at therapy, You need to look at somebody helping you around the house because you can't do it anymore. You need to go to a naturopath. Whatever you need to do, you do it. You find a way. Because you deserve to recover. So, another thing I learned was, so basically during hypomania, I don't know if anyone's ever had mania, but I had hypomania, so it's called antibiomania. And during that, I started having rage, because all these doctors had treated me really badly, and I had this rage that went through me. And I just wanted to rip things. And I'm not a rageful person, but I was like picking things, throwing things, and I imagine I was quite scary to my family. And what happened was, one of my childhood friends I invited over because I needed people around me. I didn't want to be with my girlfriend, but I didn't just want to be with my own. So I was talking to my friend and my girlfriend, and all this rage was coming out, and I said I just need to talk about this rage. And I was saying really awful things about people, cruel things, vindictive things about people that I felt angry towards. Bear in mind, I hadn't slept for 2 days, and I was getting all this rage out, and I was feeling all this anger. Doctors, a lot of it was the doctors who hadn't helped me. A lot of it was that the company made the drug. A lot of it was, people for not believing me. Whatever it was, I had all this rage, and I was getting it out. And I just felt this, for the first time in days, I felt calm. And I was like, where the fuck did that come from? To give you an example, I've been a long-term meditator. I stopped when I got Cipro because I was a bit scared of the mental health symptoms. Because if you're manic and you meditate, sometimes it can not be good. Anyway, so I was a meditator, and I hadn't missed a meditation in 3 years. And I stopped meditating. And but because I knew what calmness felt like. And that's when I felt calm, when I got all these feelings out. And I slept for 6 hours that night. Like I said, I slept for 6 hours in 3 days. And that's why I slept for 6 hours. Because I had all this anger and rage that had come out that I was just not talking about. Because I was just so looking to survive. I was looking for somebody to blame. And I wasn't talking about it. It was just bottled up inside. And actually getting it out. For you, that might be talking to a family member, or maybe it's going to be doing some writing, or maybe it's going to be doing, an audio recording or whatever it is, or it's going to be breaking things, whatever it is. If you've got anger, and you've every fucking right to be angry for what happens to us, you got prescribed this medication that everybody else seems to be fine on, and we have this horrible adverse reaction that, for some of us, changes our life. Or puts a significant dent or pause in our life. I missed 3 fucking years. I have every fucking right to be angry. And I'm sure you do too. And, I got that stuff out, and it helped me sleep. That night, that was the thing I needed to help me sleep. Next day, all this shit came back. But, just kept fucking talking about it. And anyway, that taught me that we need to get out what we feel about this, because you are going to have some feelings around this, because I certainly do. There are some of you who are going to be watching this now, and you spend a lot of your time thinking about supplements, and I've poo-pooed it, or I said the thing about Trump, and you're like, that fucking prick. Who does he think this fucking libtard? If you need to say that shit, write it down, say it. It's cool. Fucking say it in the comment section if you need to. Get that stuff out, because that is the stuff that keeps us sick and kept me sick. Because how to say it? Okay, this is a personal view, but it's a view that's shared by lots of people who I respect. No illness is just physical or just mental. There is a mental and physical component. So the reason I'm talking about a lot of the mental components, because one, I had a lot of the mental components. I had more physical bits. I didn't worry too much about them. But it's my sense of mental well-being that really I value. So I worked on that because I knew it had a benefit on the physical stuff. And the physical stuff has an effect on the mental stuff. So, for example, if I just stayed home and talked and did therapy, I would not get better. But every day I went out and walked for a bit. Got some physical exercise, got some air. I did those things because it's a combination of things. For me, it is anyway. Combining different, I guess, holistic approach, one would call it. And I think that is really, for me, the key is we're multifaceted, all of us are. We're complex. And there's different parts of us that need a voice and nurturing. You might need to learn how to talk to yourself nicely and caringly. Maybe you have all this angst and anger at yourself and not recovering. Maybe you have anger at doctors. Maybe you have anger at people who recover. Or people who say they recover. Or people who say you don't know, it's not permanent. Maybe you are thinking right now, how dare you fucking say that you've recovered and that you can recover. I think there's always a 1% of you that is always going to be ill. And you have every right to think that. I'm not you. If you believe it, you believe it. And if you feel that and you feel angry, you do need to express that in some way. But underneath it, see what's underneath it. So that's the main message in this. What's underneath the anger is that I feel jealous when somebody else says they recover because I don't think that's ever going to happen for me. I feel abandoned. I feel I'm on my own. This person's talking about his girlfriend and family, and I'm on my own, sitting in a house, and I've been ill for 20 years. I'm really sorry if that is your story, but it can be time for things to change, because I have had those similar stories and victim modes. Like I said, I've been ill with CFS for a long time. I have a story. I haven't recovered from CFS. I'm working on that now. So a lot of my mistakes I made with CFS, I made sure I didn't make with Cipro. And a lot of things that I did with Cipro to recover, I make sure I do with CFS. And actually, I've stopped believing that I recovered from CFS, but chronic fatigue syndrome, for those who don't know, but I remembered 2 weeks ago, which was when I came on the board, that I recovered from Cipro, and I never thought I was going to recover. And it gave me a kick up the arse, because it was like, what you think isn't true. It's not always true. You never thought you were going to recover, and you recovered. So you have evidence that you can recover, and you also have evidence that what you fear isn't always true. Which is hopefully a good message. So anyway, so advice that maybe I'd give people. So listen to your own intuition about what works for you and what you need. Don't worry too much about making a mistake. If you try some supplement, it doesn't work. It's cool. You tried it. You're trying. That's what matters. You said the wrong thing to somebody because you're upset because you couldn't feel your feelings, and you had all this angst about being ill and not helping you. You tried all these things. And you snapped at somebody. Forgive yourself. Apologise, obviously, but forgive yourself. The only mistake you can make is not making a mistake, because you need to make some mistakes to recover. Because if you're not making mistakes, then you're not probably pushing your boundaries out. So make sure you laugh a lot. I think that's a really important thing. So, I'm a really fucking serious person. Like I said, I grew up in a really pretty destructive upbringing, and I'm a really serious person. So please laugh, and watch something funny, and try and laugh every day. It cannot just be trying to find the next cure. Maybe this is going to work. Maybe that's going to work. Living in that state of anxiety, I don't think is healthy for us. and I don't think that helps. So, like, laugh. Call somebody who makes you smile. And other things. So speak to people who don't enable you and your anxiety, but people who listen with compassion and love. So I guess what I mean by this is, I have a strong victim story. I have had a strong victim story. And I could very easily decide, this is really hard, I'm not going to recover. And I could find somebody who would enable that, so I could talk to and kind of share my, like, woe is me, and maybe either have that reflected back to me, or else go on a message board and hear somebody say that they like didn't recover and be like, oh, I'm not going to recover. Their story is the same as my story. I think what that ends up doing for us is it entrenches us in our illness and our identity with the illness. Even if you're ill for a really long time, that cannot be our only identity. It can't be. I'm saying this to you guys because that has been my story. Maybe not with this, maybe with other things, but like, has been my identity of being an ill person. It's not fun, I haven't got anything from it. I might have got feeling like a victim. Maybe that makes me feel special because I felt like a victim, but it hasn't been fun. So, believe you're going to recover, I guess, and have people in your life who are motivating and like make you feel like, I want to be the best person I can be. And being the best person I can be is somebody who like believes that they can recover. Do you know why I decided to do a recovery story? It's because 3 years ago, when I was ill, I didn't believe that I was going to recover. And I said to myself, when I recover, I'm going to do a recovery story. And I'd forgotten about it. I could have probably done this a few months ago, or maybe done it last year or something if I really wanted to, I guess. I'd forgotten about it. But the reason I did it is because I wanted to show people that it works, but mostly show myself that things can change and we can recover. There's like a saying in like NA and AA is like, we do recover. It's like a phrase that we say, and it is basically because lots of people don't believe you can. So there's another phrase that we say in NA and AA, which is like, stick with the winners, which is, there's always people who want to go and use, who want to get fucked up, who don't want to do the program, don't go to meetings, have sponsor, wear the steps. Don't stick with them. Stick with winners. Stick with the people who's worked for. What did the people who it worked for? Okay, what did the people who recovered do to recover? Listen to those stories. You'll start hearing things. Maybe everybody used magnesium. So you might be like, I'm going to use the magnesium. Maybe everybody said, a year in, I started talking to people. So you'd be like, maybe it could be a good idea to talk to people. Maybe they say something that you can't do. Maybe it's that everybody took like a medication that you're allergic to. You're like, I can't do that. That's okay. You don't have to like freak out about that. I'm not going to recover then. It doesn't mean that. It just means you need to find something else that does work for you. So if it works, keep on using it. You might enjoy meditation to like calm down your system. You might enjoy, doing like walking in nature, being outside, seeing like greenery, because it calms down your system. Whatever works for you, do. Yeah, anyway, I think I'll probably leave it there, and if you want to ask any questions on either the Facebook chat, on the status, I'm going to post this in a few groups, and I'm going to put it on YouTube. So if you want to ask me any questions, I'm more than happy to answer anything. I had a look on YouTube and there aren't actually many video recovery stories. I don't think there's anything actually. So I think it was good to get one out there. Apologies if this has been really long and it was a bit rambly. But it was, like I said, it was the first time I've talked about this. Yeah, I feel kind of better for having spoken about this. I am not going to probably for a long time speak about the real, the darkest time of Cipro, because I think that's more like PTSD stuff, which I think comes out naturally, organically, probably in therapy at some point. Probably one day I'll just start shaking and it'll start coming out. I think it's more important to talk about recovery. Hopefully some people identified with the illness, and hopefully you're identifying with the recovery. If you haven't recovered, I hope you do recover. Because if I'm honest, I do believe we can all recover. I do believe that. There's lots of... I didn't use this person to recover, but I know there's a guy called... When he was into healing stuff, and I'm into it. There's people like Joe Dispenza, who's wonderful. Check him out. Louise Hay, she's wonderful. There's some people who really believe that we can recover from anything. And if you don't, I hope that you are able to believe one day. And if you do, great. Anyway, I shall hopefully see you guys on the message boards. Thanks, bye.